and welcome back to another special episode of the Epic Experiment Podcast. I'm your host, Bruce, and I'm joined on the line this week, not by Lux, because Lux is busy. We'll explain what happened to Lux in a second. But I do have a guest joining me today. I'm joined by our friendly neighborhood judge. Please welcome to the show, Chris. Chris, how are you again tonight? Thanks for joining us.
Tired, but otherwise good.
What happened, my friend? What happened?
Oh, digging a trench for a broken septic tank and digging a septic tank up and all that kind of fun stuff.
Oh, that sounds unpleasant. Right. Okay. I can understand. The good news, if you would live here in Canada, you wouldn't have to do that because the ground's already frozen. So, that's, good times.
Right.
Welcome to Canada.
Right.
Now, as for Lux was in a store today. We're in the grand city of Burleson, Texas, and a customer came in. This customer was coughing and sputtering and had a flimsy face covering on. So now the store needs to clean everything quite deeply. So Lux is indisposed tonight, there, folks. So we're lucky Chris is joining us, and it's going to be our judge ask a judge night, where Judge Chris is going to help us through some of the more tricky interactions of the latest set, the Command Legends. So we're very pleased to have him with us tonight. Little housekeeping here before we get underway. Don't forget, you can find all of our content on thelotuscouncil.com. Please stop in there and have a look. Check out the show. Check out articles. Check out their YouTube videos. I think Sona had busted out a box of Commander Legends today and opened it on camera. So come and check it out. But most importantly, they have a really, really happening Discord with lots of cool people who love to talk Magic, and particularly EDH. So if you love Magic, you love to talk about all things cards, trade cards, options for decks, come check out their Discord. You'll find Lux and I both in there, and lots of other great people. So come on over to thelotuscouncil.com. Also, as a reminder, we are participating in the third annual 31 Days of Christmas again this year. We are thankful for our opportunity to be on board and want to say thank you to the community by building an EDH deck using our own guidelines. So we use cards from Return to Ravnica Block and forward. We're building it through Twitter polls. So if you follow us on Twitter, you too can have a say in what goes into the deck. Just a latest opportunity to have input went in. We had some cool cards that were optioned. So by all means, come and check it out. If you check in the show notes, the entry form to be entered for the draws is available for you to sign up, and maybe you too can win one of the great prizes that'll be given away for the entire month of December. So please come check it out. You will not regret it. Last but not least, for here on the show, we crossed over episode 40 last week. So as sort of become the tradition here on the show, we're going to be giving away some stuff. So we're giving away a Breya Ethereum Shaper from Double Masters, but we also have a pack of Commander Legends that has been added to the pot. So stick around to the end of the show to find out how you can be entered into winning that. So, Chris, are you ready?
Yeah, and congratulations on your 40th episode, by the way.
Thank you. Lux and I were just commenting just last week. It's hard to believe that we're now 40 episodes in. It doesn't feel like it's been doing that long, but I guess so. The math adds up. It's been 40 episodes, so kind of wild. All right, so first segment tonight, we have Fracturing Gust. And why is that link not working now? Well, that's unfortunate. Well,
there's a period at the end of it.
Oh, that's why, because I'm not smart. There, that would do it. Still not okay. Well, good news for you. Nope. Good news for everybody is we can search up Fracturing Gust on the old Scryfall anyway, without the need for it. There it is. Okay, Fracturing Gust, which is an instant for 2, and then Selesnya. So white green hybrids. And it says destroy all artifacts and enchantments. You gain 2 life for each permanent destroyed this way. So when we play garbage or great, Chris, we decide if we think this card might be garbage or if we think it is great. Do you want to have first crack at Fracturing Gust?
Yeah, personally, I actually think it's great. It's in Selesnya colors. I think honestly more people should be playing more Artifact Enchantment Hate, especially of the mass board life variety. You have the potential for a huge amount of life gain, getting 2 life for each permanent you destroy that way if you're playing at a full table of 3 to 4 other opponents. And I mean, when it comes down to it, if you're playing Selesnya, there's a high possibility that most of your extra mana generation is going to be coming from extra land searches, or it's going to be coming from mana dorks if you're not playing an Enchantress.
Absolutely. No, for sure. I'm the same way. I have like having faced this card down and having blown up most of my board with it. I think the card is phenomenal, and I agree. I think, particularly with the trend recently, and I would say starting with what Ravnica Allegiance, we've had Wilderness Reclamation, and on and on and on. Like there's been a whole slew of them that have come out recently. I would say within the last 2 years of really powerful enchantments that need to die on sight, or if you can't, you need to have some sort of a silver bullet. So I think this is also awesome. If you put it in your deck, you're probably recognize you're not going deep on enchantments anyways, and that's okay. So I think it's great. The only drawback is the fact that it is 5 mana, but the fact that you're going to get multiple targets with it, and multiple sticky things, like you get your Fires of Invention, you get your Experimental Frenzy, you get I don't know, whatever else. There's lots of them out there. And not to mention all the enchantments. You blow up all their rocks, you blow up all their, you blow up I don't know, there's so many options. It's not even fun. So I think it's great. So yeah, I think this one's pretty much a slam dunk this week. This one's good. And I'll be honest with you, like it's from Shadowmoor, and at $3.30 or something like that is what the Scryfall is listed for a price. Like that's a pretty reasonable price, I have to say.
That's not bad at all.
No, like that's Shadowmoor is like one of those sets that's a little bit tricky to track down sometimes, but at that sort of price point, that's appealing and probably should get run in decks that can play it. So, yeah, go find a Fracturing Gust. You will not be sad.
Well, your opponents will.
Well, sometimes they can feel sadness, and that's okay. It's good. It builds character. It builds character. All right, so we're moving on to some judge questions here, or our segment 2. First, we're going to talk some of the mechanics that are coming from Commander Legends. So there were 4 that I identified that really are worded out on the cards, and then there's like the Legendary Matters cards. Like there's stuff that like your Commander Matters stuff, but that's sort of different, and I don't really lump that in as actual mechanic. So we have Cascade, Encore, Monarch, and Partner. Now, is there an order you want to tackle these there, Chris? Like, which one of these you want to tackle first? Which would be easiest first to knock it off?
We can just start from the top.
Okay, let's start with Cascade then. So, I didn't really play with Cascade. I've seen it on cards. I think I get the gist of it. I'll let you explain it to me so that I make sure I don't mess it up when I get my hands on some Commander Legends stuff.
Right. So, Cascade, it says that when you cast a spell, if that card has Cascade on it, then as soon as you cast it and it goes onto the stack, you can choose to exile cards from the top of your library until you reveal a card that costs less than the spell that you cast that has Cascade on it. And when you hit a non-land card that costs less than that, you can cast that spell for free right then, right there. The timing does not matter on it because Cascade is part of the resolution of the spell. And then after you resolve whatever spell you cascaded into, you resolve the spell that has Cascade as part. So if you cast a Maelstrom Wanderer, which has Cascade, you're going to cascade for each instance of Cascade on a card. So you're going to cascade once, and then you're going to cascade again, and then you're going to resolve the Maelstrom Wanderer. And if you would happen to resolve Cascade, and the spell you cast also had Cascade, then you continue to cascade further, which is what makes cards like Yidris, Maelstrom Wielder, completely absurd, because Yidris says that whenever that commander deals combat damage to a player, all of your spells have Cascade this turn. So it's just a domino effect from there. The biggest rules things with Cascade is that if you hit something with X in its mana cost, X will always be 0 because Cascade is telling you you're casting it for free. You also cannot pay alternate mana costs, such as Overload on Cyclonic, because you're casting it for free. You can cast additional costs because when you Cascade, it's saying you may cast a spell for free.
But you can pay kicker, right?
You can pay kicker, or like, if for some reason you're playing the Stride cards from Journey into Nyx, then you can pay those. But other than that, X spells and any alternate costs such as Overload cannot be paid when you hit those spells of Cascade.
So I think the piece that's interesting there for me that I've hadn't quite. So if I hit a card, I don't have to cast it though, right? So for instance, if I hit an instant or sorcery that, for instance, I hit a counter spell, there's obviously no target for it. I can elect not to cast that spell, and it would go back into my deck instead of being
right.
Right.
It is a May ability. So if you hit something like a counter spell that does not have a legal target at the time that you cast it, or some other effect, you hit a board wipe and you're like, not a great time for that right now. You can choose to just not cast it, and it will go on the bottom of your library in random order, and then you can try and get back to it later.
Oh yeah, like it still sucks, but at least you have it still.
Right.
Right. Excellent. Very cool. Very cool. I like that. I'm looking forward, now that you described that, I'm looking forward to that like quad Cascade monster even better. So yeah. Up next we have Encore. Which is a new ability. I think we've seen something similar to it before. It's like kind of like Unearth, but not like kind of on crack sort of idea.
Mm-hmm.
So Encore, if I remember right, so creature is in your graveyard and has an Encore ability. So you end up. Is it an activated ability? Is that what it's called?
Yes, it would be an activated ability.
I can pay that cost, and then I get token of that creature equal to the number of opponents I have, and then those creatures have to attack if able, and they get haste. And then at the end of my turn, they end up being sacrificed. Did I get it right?
Yes.
Okay. So was there anything sort of unusual about the Encore? Like, it seems like a rather straightforward mechanic in terms of like it's kind of like Unearth meets like being multiplied by 3. So, what is there anything neat about this particular mechanic that we haven't seen before?
The interesting thing about the Encore mechanic is that it makes those tokens. So if you have any token doublers such as Anointed Procession or Parallel Lives, and that will affect the tokens that you get from Encore. Other than that, you actually had it quite right when you mentioned that it was basically Earth. So, except that you're making a copy for each of your opponents, just one version, the one creature that you get from Unearth. Because with Unearth, you just bring the actual creature back, and with Encore, you're exiling the original card and just making a token copy. You can also end the turn if you have any effects such as Sundial of the Infinite or any other of those.
Oh, Becca!
You can keep those because those will not. Then you will not have an end step, so then those tokens will stay.
Right. I think the Encore on that Phyrexian Trinus sphere or whatever, or the Trinus form looks amazing.
Oh yeah.
That looks kind of wild. I'm like, oh, that's disgusting. But anyway, we can get to that. I think I've talked about that before on the show, but anyway, that one's a fun one. There's lots of fun, cool cards with Encore. Monarch is another one. So could you go ahead and explain what Monarch we've got? What's about Monarch? Because people may not have played with it because it was only in Battle Bond, which wasn't really that widely played with, despite the fact that it's a really good mechanic.
Right. So Monarch says that if you are the Monarch, it's a status effect. It's kind of like the City's Blessing from Rivals of Ixalan. It's something, except it's not permanent. It can be taken from you, whereas opposed to the City's Blessing could. The Monarch is a status effect that's on you, the player, and it says that at the beginning of your end step, if you're the Monarch, you may draw a card. You can have the Monarch taken from you if you are dealt combat damage. So whenever a player deals combat damage to another player, they become the Monarch. And that means that you can't do a lightning bolt or some kind of indirect damage. It has to be combat damage that you're dealing to that player to become the Monarch. Take it from them through combat or through damage. The other way.
That's a question just to clarify. So but if I'm the Monarch, they have to deal damage to me. They just can't damage any of the other players on the table. They have to damage the actual Monarch, correct?
Correct.
Okay. I might have misunderstood the part there, but anyway, you keep going.
Yeah, but the other way they become the monarch is that there's a large amount of cards, especially now in Commander Legends, that simply say you become the monarch as soon as you cast that spell or that spell resolves, or that creature or permanent enters the battlefield under control. In which case, whoever is the monarch at the time will no longer be the monarch, and you become the monarch. And if the monarch has not been introduced to the game yet, then at that point it will be introduced.
Cool. I have played with this on a few of the cards from BattleBond. I think it's a lot of fun. I'm looking forward to playing with it some more. I think it should be in a lot more decks.
Oh, I completely agree. And it's something that I really like about the fact that they brought the Monarch back, is that it really encourages people to sit there and rather than just build up their boards and be nervous to attack one another, it really encourages people to actually get in there and actually be active in the game as opposed to having a lot of stalemates that tend to build up in Commander games.
Absolutely. I'm a big believer in things that help people get dead. And it's finding a balance there, but like I'm a big I like it, and because no one likes the 3-hour marathon match, because like when that 3-hour game is, it's always the last game of the night. Like you played one or two, and you're like, let's shuffle up one more time. We'll have a quick one. Then it's 3 hours long, and it's 2:30 in the morning, and you're like, oh, this is a bad idea. So yeah, like it. I'm a big fan of it. The last one is partner, and so partner is a keyword on a number of legendary creatures that allows them to partner, like be a commander in conjunction with another creature with partner on it. I guess now there's some planeswalkers that have it as well, so they can be planeswalkers as your commander. And the color identity for your deck is now determined by both of those creatures, or commanders, I suppose. And it's interesting in the sense that now you can sort of mix and match a whole bunch more of these partners around to get all sorts of crazy combinations and funky decks.
Yeah, partner is amazing. It was introduced in 2016 in the Commander pre-con set from that year in the 4-card Commander pre-cons. They've definitely had some that were a little bit over the edge on the power. Those are mainly known as Thrasios, Triton Hero, and Timon of the Weaver. Those are the most prominent ones. With partner, there is a difference to recognize between partner and partner with, which was introduced in BattleBond. With partner, you can pair a partner with anything else that says partner, but not a commander that says partner with. A commander that has partner with can only be paired with the commander that text specifies. So, for example, Rowan Kenrith has partner with Will Kenrith. So Rowan can only be partnered with Will Kenrith and will not be able to be partnered with any of the new partner commanders out of Commander Legends or the ones from.
Right. Which seems fair. Like, I mean, I have a Regna and Krav deck, so I'm familiar with partner with. I've never built a partner's deck, which I'm looking forward to doing that, because there's a lot of options that could be done, and like I like the fact that you've gone. Some of them are uncommon, right up to, I think there's about a number of mythics that are partners, so you can do lots of crazy cool things with your partners if you want. Could I have more than 2 partners, or am I limited to having a maximum of 2?
You are limited to a maximum of 2 partners.
Well, thank goodness for that. So, because I mean, who wants a 5-color deck? Me. Like, I got 5 commanders sitting there.
Like, we don't have enough good stuff 5-color decks already. I'm looking at you, Golos and Kenrith.
Or Morphon, or
First Sliver.
Yeah, First Sliver, or Khazri, or there's a bunch. There's a whole bunch of them. Like, it's not even challenging anymore. Like, anyway.
I will say one thing I really do appreciate about the partner commanders in Commander Legends is that so many of them are uncommon. And there's been this very quiet movement for pauper commander, where you use an uncommon creature or legendary creature as your commander for the deck, and everything else in the commander deck is common. And it can actually be kind of fun. I tried to build it once. I built Shaman of the Pack. I think it's like the uncommon Golgari elf that when enters the battlefield, each opponent loses life equal to the number of elves you control. And I actually built a pauper elf ball deck commander deck once, and so I really actually like that. Especially in the last few years, they've kind of gone out on a limb. They've made more uncommon legendary creatures, especially with Dominaria and Throne of Eldraine. And so with the partners this time around, none of them at the uncommon level are particularly broken, but they do actually have a lot of very neat effects. So I think Pauper Commander is actually going to help take off.
I like it. I think it's a great idea to have more ways of playing the game and enjoying what we do. So, you know, I think it's I'm a big proponent for it. I also think that the uncommon commanders have given a lot of new players an avenue to get into the game at a complexity level that's appealing. I teach middle school kids how to play Magic in a club at my school, and teaching them how to play standard or is challenging because they end up kind of being like dogs chasing cars. They want to bark at everything. Where if you give them an uncommon commander, say, okay, you have to use these colors, whether it's one or two colors, or I think they only have two colors. But anyways, use these. This is your commander. You can only use cards in this color combination. It really puts the kids on rails, and they can understand what their deck's supposed to do far more easily than trying to sift through 20,000 different card titles. And so I think it's a really, really good development for the game in general. So I really like it. And there's a reason whenever I see an uncommon legendary creature, I yoink it and put it aside, and knowing that I'm going to give it to a kid to play with at my school when COVID shenanigans is over. Because unfortunately right now I can't even run my Magic Club at school. So
Right.
boo. All right.
Yeah.
Yeah, it sucks. I've had kids at school in the hallway stop me and go, Mr. Gray, is there gonna be a Magic Club this year? And I'm like, guys, there's nothing this year. There's nothing. So
There's nothing.
There's nothing. All right, so let's talk about some of these cards that we've got. So first up, we have Archon of Coronation, which is 4 white, flying Archon, 5/5, and is when Archon of Coronation enters the battlefield, you become the monarch. Which all of it we understand. It's this last line of text that is interesting. As long as you're the monarch, damage doesn't cause you to lose life. So I think the question here does this prevent infect damage?
Right. So the specific wording here is that damage doesn't cause you to lose life. So the damage is actually still happening. It just doesn't cause your life total to change. So the same is actually true of infect, which says that it doesn't stop infect. Anything that triggers or affects or that would happen when combat damage is dealt actually still happens. Your life total just doesn't change.
Right. Okay. So I get the idea my life total shouldn't change, but I'm like, you know what? There's always that guy who's got the Triumph of the Hordes in his hand, and you're like, you still lose to that. So that's still lose. But you know what? Okay, fine. But otherwise, it's a cool card. I love the fact that it's got the Monarch staple to it. You get a big old flying body at 5/5, which I think is pretty reasonable. And then you get the life just not taking the life loss, which I think is also really good. Now, could I pay life for stuff with this?
You can pay life because paying life is typically losing life, and losing life and damage
are actually
correct.
Okay. All right. Good. All right. So that's because if I was going to be precluded from doing things like paying life for my Sign in Blood, then that's not cool. I mean, not that Sign in Blood's a great card in its own right, but it gets run lots. So anyway, cool. All right. Next, we have Seraphic Greatsword. And let's read this one. This one's confusing. So 1 and a white artifact equipment. The equipped creature gets +2/+2 and has equip cost of 4. And whenever equipped creature attacks the player with the most life or tied for the most life, create a 4/4 white angel creature token with flying that's tapped and attacking that player. Okay, so I've got two questions here. First off, this doesn't behave like Geist of St. Trap, correct? Like this angel token, like Geist of St. Trap makes the angel token be sacrificed at the end of your turn, or it's exiled. Sorry, it's exiled. But this doesn't, right? This angel token stays. Is that correct?
That's correct. At the end of turn, they will actually.
Okay. So they keep it. So here's the next question though: is like, why is this mythic? Like, this doesn't make sense to me. Why this card makes mythic? Because like that doesn't seem like a mythic ability. Like if you compare it to Archon of Coronation, which is another mythic, why is Seraphic Greatsword a mythic? What is going on
I,
here? Am I missing something?
I think the rarity here has to do with the higher level and the limited format they designed for Commander Legends. This is definitely an equipment I can see running away with the game if it's answered immediately, so they likely wanted to pop up on drafts pretty infrequently. There's at least one uncommon partner that's really great with equipment. That's Ardent, Intrepid Archaeologist, and he says, as a triggered ability at the beginning of combat, you get to attach any number of orders and equipment to target permanent or player. So that would get really nasty with the Seraphic Greatsword if you happen to have that show up a lot, and you're partnered with like Kobold, Rugrak that has like I think it's like Menace Triple and First Strike or something like that. So there's a big potential and limited for that to actually kind of just run away with the game. And there's kind of a precedent for them to make shift rarities depending on limited. Masters 25 was a very sore example for a lot of people that weren't happy about opening Channel or Tree of Redemption as their mythic in the set. And it's pretty clear that their thinking was putting those at mythic so they didn't pop up and draft that often because of the impact that they would have on drafting.
Right. I suppose that makes sense. Yeah. No. It just doesn't feel like a mythic piece of equipment, but
Yeah,
like it's still a cool card. But I'm like, there's a number of options that are like way better, and I like the fact that equip cost is super expensive.
right.
It doesn't have an auto equip. Like we sort of started seeing that with Battle Zendikar Rising, like the auto equip, which is
Mm-hmm.
kind of a nice ability to put on a creature. Like I don't know, like it just doesn't seem awesome, but I'm like it's cool. It's a cool card, and
Oh,
like the fact the angel token doesn't disappear at the end of your turn, very cool. Very cool. I like that part. I mean, I might try it out. If I had a deck that would like fooling around with it, I might try it out. Ghost of Ramirez Di Pietro, which is cool because this is a throwback to like Legends. Is this like
oh yeah.
where this guy is old? Anyway, so let's have a look at the card. So, as you call it, Spooky Di Pietro is a legendary creature, Pirate Spirit, 2/3. Ghost of Ramirez Di Pietro can't be blocked by creatures with toughness 3 or greater. And whenever Ghost of Ramirez Di Pietro deals combat damage to a player, choose up to one target card in a graveyard that was discarded and put there from a library this turn. Put that card into its owner's hand. And then it's got partner. This block of text looks is confusing. Like, what am I being asked to do? Do I give them back their card? I don't know. What is happening?
So the trigger only refers to having to deal combat damage to a player, but doesn't specify that the card you're returning to someone's hand has to be from that player's graveyard. So that means you can return your own cards to your hand if you self-milled or you discarded the card for some reason. Or as you said, you could actually be nice and give someone else a card back. In the case of Commander Legends, especially as far as drafting it, Ramirez is probably one of those commanders that I don't anticipate seeing out that much outside the draft. I'm sure they'll probably be built around Ramirez for whatever reason, but it would probably work best partnered with Armix Filigree Smasher because Armix has a trigger when it attacks, where you discard a card and give a creature that defending player controls -X till a turn, where X is the number of artifacts you control and they're in your graveyard. So after you attack with Armix to get that trigger, you immediately go to combat damage. And if you're connecting damage with Ramirez, then you can get that card back. So there's actually some pretty neat synergy there in a limited.
Oh, okay. The fact that it can be any player is like it doesn't need to be them. Although you could play some fun political games there, where you
Oh
make
yeah,
them like pitch something or something that just died. You like, I can get that back. Let me attack you with my commander, and you can have that thing back. That's gonna do the like, and you can make some fun political deals there. So I picked out this card for the political aspect of it more so than the actual raw like power of it. But like I like a good political commander. You just gotta be in the mind frame for that guy. So very
oh
cool.
yeah, you can really mess with some tables doing that.
All right, next up we have Hull Breacher, and this one drew a lot of heat in the old interwebs. So 2 and a blue for a creature Merfolk Pirate 3/2 with flash. And it says if an opponent would draw a card, except the first one they draw in each of their draw steps. Instead, you create a treasure token instead. So I think I understand what's happening here. Is it saying that instead of them drawing a card, I get a treasure? I think that's what that says happening. But then again, I question that because that is savage, like absolutely savage. So did it just happen like I think it did?
Well, the keyword here to look for in the text is the word instead, signifying that there's a replacement. So what that means is that this is replacing what would normally happen. In this case, your opponent's drawing any cards other than the first card they draw during their draw step turn. So the answer is no, your opponents don't get the card, but you do get the treasure. It's definitely a spin on Notion Thief I wasn't expecting.
Yeah, it's mean. Like that is Notion Thief's bad. Like a mean card. People don't like it. People are getting bent when they get Notion Thief into oblivion. And now there's a secondary effect for it now. Like people are gonna be pissed. There's gonna be a lot of feel bads at a table. Like, could you imagine someone like going like, here's my, I don't know, who knows? Like, here's my Sphinx's Rev for 5, and you're like, oh, but no, I get 5 treasure tokens. And you try and just savage, just right savage.
I think the thing that gets me most about it is that you're going to want to play this against people that are playing like the Ristic studies and things like that, where they're constantly drawing additional more and more cards. But it's in the same color, so instead of it being used against the Ristic study players, it's the Ristic study players that are playing this to get even more cards.
Yes, like I think it should have been a white card. That's what I think. I think it should have been a white card, and it's like a la Smothering Tide. Like that's what I think.
That or Alms Collectors actually from the cat deck in the that's a precedent for this effect actually being there. I know that Gavin Bearhay had a Twitter thread I saw where he was explaining why it wasn't white instead and how he didn't feel it was a white effect, but precedent's actually already there.
Yeah, so I just do I care fundamentally this card is going to get played? No. Like in most of the games I'm going to play, is Hull Breacher going to be a major event? Like no. Like I'm not imagining that most of my friends I play with in my play group, whenever that gets back to normal, are going to be running this sort of savage card denial. But there's going to be people out there who do, and and they're like, well, I opened my sweet box of Commander Legends, and I got this is my cool card. I'm going to run this, and then they're going to get somebody, and they're going to be like, oh, that didn't feel so good. people are like mad at you now. You're like, oh, right, sorry about that. Bam. So a cool card, like there's no argument. The card is cool, but I think it's like, fits. I think it fits into White's abilities better than Blue. But anyway, whatever. I don't make the cards. I make a podcast. So anyway. Up next, we have the Moxfield Deluge, which this is a card that I flagged right off the hop, and I think this card is nuts if it does what I think it does. So 6 blue for a sorcery. Exile target instant or sorcery card from a graveyard. Copy that card 3 times. You may cast the copies without paying their mana costs. Exile Mnemonic Deluge. So the effect seems simple. Like it's kind of like, it almost feels like in the same. It's like this is the blue Fiery Emancipation. Or the whatever the other triple, the Nyxborn Ancient, Nyxbloom Ancient from Theros Beyond Death. Like this is the blue triplet right here, and this thing is redonkulous. Are there any corner cases people should be watching out for?
It's definitely incredibly powerful, and it is really pretty simple. Something interesting to note is that it creates copies of the spells for you to cast. So any effects that matter when you actually cast things will still take effect. For example, even though the rules text says you can cast those 3 copies for free, Thalia, Guardian of Thraben's effect that causes non-creature spells to cost 1 more to cast will still apply. Effects such as Painful Quandary, which is an enchantment that says whenever an opponent casts a spell, each opponent loses 5 life. Unless you discard a card, will still take effect if you cast this and an opponent had Painful Quandary. And there are a couple of important rules notes otherwise as well. you have to cast all 3 copies during the resolution of Demonic Deluge. You can't save them for later. So once Demonic Deluge is done resolving, you've lost your chance to cast any of those copies. You also have to ignore. You also get to ignore timing since it's resolving. Since it's something that happens during the resolution of the spell of Demonic Deluge, so you can cast a sorcery as well if you want when you cast it. And as for potential to backfire or not work as intended, you do choose. If you choose an X spell, much like with Cascade that we were talking about earlier, X will be 0 for the mana cost because the mana cost is already determined. The mana cost is free. So because of this, you can't choose alternate casting costs and overload Cyclonic Rift. So if you really wanted to pour salt on the wound and cast Cyclonic Rift overloaded 3 times for some reason, you can't do that because that's an alternate casting. But you still can't pay additional costs such as Kicker or Strive, but you would have to pay that additional cost for each instance of that.
Could you imagine triple overloaded Cyclonic Rift? Like, this is unbelievable. Like, oh, what have you done? Like,
She's just literally just dumping a bag of salt onto the table.
like, after you show up with like a box of table salt, and you just put it on the table in the middle, and like, you resolve your spell. I think the one that's saltier yet still is expropriation. When you play expropriate, and like I know it exiles itself. So like perhaps somehow if you manage to mill it into your opponent's graveyard or they discard it or something, and then you can go and do this with it, you're like, that's the most disgusting thing ever. Like just scoop up the game and try again because that's ridiculous. But this card is very, very powerful. It's like to my way of thinking, it's like the splashy blue tripler, and like blue's not going to get an enchantment the same way that red's going to get, or a creature like green. Blue's going to get a spell, and this makes sense. Like this is blue's tripler, which makes me very worried for black and white's tripler, which are going to come down the pipe real soon. Like they're coming. We're going to get triplers. It's going to happen. Like whites doesn't worry me so much. But it's going to be the black one that's going to be like sack 3 things. Like if something would die, 3 things. Like I don't know what it's going to be, but it's going to be no one's going to have any fun for it.
It's going to be ultra pops.
Yeah. All right. Then we have Sakashima of 1,000 Faces. This card is cool. Cool. All right, so legendary creature, human rogue for 3 in a blue. It's a 3/1, and you may have Sakashima of 1,000 Faces enter the battle as a copy of another creature you control, except it is Sakashima of 1,000 Faces' other's abilities. And the legend rule doesn't apply to permanents you control, and now it has partner. So, as a judge, when you see people, like somebody sits down in a play group and this is their commander, do you have any like advice for people, like what should they be cloning, or like how to make this? Because I think this one's going to cause inordinate amounts of trouble, not because the actual card itself is hard to understand, but cloning things inherently brings a level of confusion to like just stuff. So and your board state. So do you have advice on people to make how to manage this sort of stuff about cloning things?
So the biggest thing to note about cloning is that when a card comes in as a copy of something, it copies, unless the text says otherwise. For example, Sakashima says that its name is still Sakashima of 1,000 Faces. Anything other than rules text that specifies that certain things change, everything is the same. So if you had Sakashima of 1,000 Faces enter the battlefield as a copy of, say, Tymna the Weaver, and Tymna the Weaver was your partner commander of Sakashima, then everything on Tymna, the power toughness, the color, even the mana cost, the creature types, all of that is applied to Sakashima at that point. And I actually think, as far as Sakashima's partners, because Sakashima does have partner, is that I think it's an amazing partner of Tymna the Weaver and Vile Smasher the Fierce, because then you would also get, with being a copy, then you also get double the triggers. So the amount of potential card draw of Tymna. So Tymna says that during your post-combat main phase, you may pay X life and draw X cards. X is the number of opponents who have been dealt combat damage this turn. So you gain, you could pay 6 life to get 6 cards if you attack everyone in that game. Or then there's Vile Smasher, which this combination would give you access to Grixis color identity. where you can get double Bile Smash triggers to a random opponent every time you cast your first spell for the turn and deal damage to them equal to the converted mana cost. Or you could do nasty stuff like his second, he has this static ability that says your legendary rules don't apply. So you could have him come in and play as a copy of Sheoldred, if you're running Sheoldred 99. Or you could cast Rites of Replication Kicks on one of your legendary creatures and keep all 5 of those copies from
whoa, yeah, rights of rep. Wow, I hadn't thought of the rights of replication because now the legendary rule is just straight up gone, so you can make 5 copies of Children. Oh, that's disgusting. So disgusting. Wow. Wow, I'm rather appalled and amazed, but appalled mostly at that thought. Oh, like I recognize that's like a million mana in Christmas Land, but good God,
Right.
that sounds like fun. Woo.
Yeah, heck yeah.
Or make you cry, one or the other, depending on which end of that.
Just don't play against someone with Simic Commander.
Yeah, because you're gonna get like the thing there is that like once you bounce Takashima, all those tokens just die.
Yeah, that is very true. There is that,
which is a bit of a drawback, but anyway, that's still cool. Wow, this guy is neat. A neat guy. There's some disgusting things you're going to do, and people are going to do disgusting things. And just going to say, like in this world of like webcam EDH, like people are going to have like that's going to be a nightmare to try and track on Battlefield. Like that's one thing people are forgetting. Like this is like right now EDH looks like mostly like webcam commander, I think, and yeah, that's gonna be a mess. But anyway, a fun mess.
A fun mess.
Yeah, hopefully people have judges playing with them at their table because otherwise it's going to be hard to keep it all straight. So anyway, yeah, and your poor head's going to explode. I'm sorry, Chris. All right, Sphinx of the Second Sun is up next. So 6 blue, 6/6 flying creature Sphinx. At the beginning of your post-combat main phase, you get an additional beginning phase after this phase. Okay, I have never ever heard of a beginning phase in Magic. So, I mean, granted, I haven't paid that much attention to like phases, but I have never heard of a beginning phase. So, is this some sort of made-up terminology? What does this entail?
All right, so there's actually 3 definitive phases. Well, actually 4 definitive phases in a turn, but people mostly know them as your individual steps, your untap, upkeep, draw. Then you have your main phase, and then you have your beginning of combat, declare attackers, declare blockers, combat damage. Those are all actually under umbrellas as phases. So they've always existed. Many players just aren't aware because they're focused on the individual steps because so many triggers and things happen during the individual steps rather than in just the overall phase. So when this triggers at the beginning of your second main phase or your post-combat main phase, as it's actually called, you'll do everything you would normally do at the beginning of your turn. So permanents will phase in or out. Phasing is a thing for the game during your untap step. Beginning of upkeep step or draw step triggers will happen, such as your Phyrexian Arena or your Sylvan Library and so on. And then because this additional beginning phase happens after your post-combat main phase, I need to read the exact phrase. Is it before or after? Beginning of your post-combat main initial phase after. Okay, so this happens after you go to your next phase after your post-combat main phase. So after the second beginning phase, then you'll go immediately to your end phase, end of turn phase, and you'll go from there.
Wow. Oh, wow. Like this card is like kind of wild. Like I read this and like the reminder text in the box, and so obviously the beginning phase includes the untap, upkeep, and draw steps all over again. So like this size buying you an extra card, it's like pulls a Seaborn Muse impersonation or a Wilderness Reclamation impersonation. It's that's kind of nuts. Like,
Yeah, and something is very interesting is that if you have anything that adds additional any additional main phases that you use in your second main phase, then you will have yet another instance of a beginning phase because like there's a lot of combat tricks like aggravated assault to say after this main phase there's an additional combat phase followed by another main phase. So you would end your current main phase, get a beginning step, then do your combat step from aggravated assault, then go to a main phase, and it gets all kinds of wonky when you start adding any other effects that give you additional main phase.
yeah, like, oh, this is gonna hurt my head. Like, like, wow, cool card, nice. Like, I
Very cool.
like may cost 1,000,000 mana, but that is funky.
Yeah, this to me is what Mythic should actually be. Is stuff like this. It does very unique effects like this. It's not necessarily inherently broken. It's very powerful, but not necessarily inherently broken by itself.
I agree. Like, this to me feels like a mythic card. Like, this is big, it's splashy. It's not like super streamlined to go like for competitive play. Like, there's no doubt if you're playing this guy in your deck, you are looking to like do something goofy with it, and that's okay. I like this card a whole lot. Really like it. Moving from a goofy, probably more like casual but powerful card, we have a powerful card that isn't goofy in the least and is disgustingly mean. We have opposition agent. So 2 and a black creature, human rogue with flash is a 3/2. And here's the text that drives everybody crazy. You control your opponents while they're searching their libraries. While an opponent is searching their library, they exile each card they find. You may play those cards for as long as they remain exiled, and you may spend mana as though it were mana of any color to cast them. Oh boy. So I think everyone recognizes this is a mean card. Like, if you're playing this, it's because, and like, I have no doubt they're playing this so that people who are looking to play multiple tutors maybe like think twice about it, right? Like, all like, I can imagine this being slotted into CEDH decks to help fight off tutors, but this is going to slide into like casual decks, and it's going to be like all sorts of mean for all sorts of reasons. So help me out here. How mean is this card? It's not awful. Like, it's a good card. I don't want anyone to think that I don't think it's a good card. It is a good card, but how can this be exploited to make people like go crazy?
So the first and foremost thing to note about this is that you can't have them find a card type the tutor effect doesn't search for. For example, if they cast Enlightened Tutor, can't have them go find a land. They can still only find an artifact or enchantment, and in that case of an effect like Enlightened Tutor, specifically, the agent is replacing where it would normally go by sending it to exile. So whether the card search would enter the battlefield or go on top of their library or into their hand, it will always go into exile. Um, Also, in the case of cards that specify what type of color card they can find or card type, you can choose to have them actually not find any unless it's an unconditional search like Demonic Tutor or Increasing Ambition cast with flashback or whatnot, in which case you actually have to find the most cards possible because there are no conditions to search. So all in all, you can be pretty mean. You could be stealing the ramp spell for like their third color that they need because they kept the hand with the Soul Ring and 2 lands and a ramp spell or something, or you can find their expropriate, or since you pay all the costs, as opposed to Mnemonic Betrayal and Cascade, which we talked about before. In the case of this, it's going to exile, and you can pay mana of any color to cast it, but you are actually still casting the spell, so you could go find their Cyclonic Rift and overload it, or pay any.
Oh,
I think
oh.
I think at casual tables, the appeal this has to me actually is finding combo players and hosing them. If you're playing against a combo player and they have their Exquisite Blood on the battlefield, and you think they're going to go find their Same Bond, or maybe they have a Micaeus Unhallowed out and they're going to go find their tutoring, and you think they're going to go find Skillion, you could actually flash this in and have them go find those, and those would go into exile, and you can choose to just have them stay in exile. So they stay in exile and forever. You don't put them on the battlefield or cast them. They can never, outside of very, very few cards, they can never get them back. So they don't risk comboing. So I think it is a very powerful card, and I think there's definitely going to be a lot of feel bads with this card. But I actually kind of appreciate it from the perspective of a more casual battlecruiser player. I play on a spectrum of power levels, and I think it is going to incentivize people to not run like hard tutors so much and have them go out on a limb and like go, I'm just gonna go find my best card in the deck. I'm always gonna have an answer, because I think that's kind of the antithesis of a singleton format, and I think the amount of tutors have kind of started filtering into the format over the years as people get more and more invested in it is actually kind of bad for the format. So despite knowing that some people are going to get some real feel bads from this, I actually think it's a net positive for the more casual.
I tend to agree with you. I think I know that the potential is there to exploit it in a way that is going to make people feel really bad. But if you put in your mind that you're looking to use it as a way to fight off a tutor, or like you say, a combo piece, or that big game ender, and like your opponent is digging for it and looking for it, and like it's one thing if they draw their combo piece or draw their big finisher, like, and that's fine. Like I have no problem losing to that. But it's when they go and like the redundancy of having tutor spells to go find it, and you're like, right, that's unfun. So yeah, I appreciate having the tool to go and make sure that you have a way to fight it off, particularly if you're not in blue with a counter spell. Like this is essentially reads counter your counter your tutor. And now I can go and get something cool out of your deck too, which is also kind of fun. But like it's mostly like fight off their thing. And I like that because there aren't particularly there are going to be combo players, but they're just it sucks when they go and tutor for the combo piece and end you.
Yeah, I think the most unfortunate thing about it is we're in the, you just mentioned earlier, we're in the world of webcam EDH, where people are really kind of avoiding playing cards to let them search and tutor through their opponent's decks. So it's going to be kind of hard to play right now.
Yeah, I know it's gonna be a mess. Like, there's no doubt about it. Like, this is just gonna be a difficult card to play efficiently without like it's just gonna be tough. So anyway, it's cool. I like it. You do have to play. I think the intention behind the card is good to give us a tool. I'm afraid the application may be exploited by some people, but that's par for the course, right? So
right.
Up next, we have Profane Transfusion, which is 6 black for a sorcery. 2 target players exchange life totals. You create an XX colors or artifact creature token with X the difference between those players' life totals. Okay, my only question, like, it's undeniably powerful. Why is this a mythic for 9 mana? Like, why?
I think this goes back to the same with the Seraphic Greatsword that we were talking about earlier, and that I think the rarity was determined by the power level and not wanting it to come up too much with drafting Commander Legends, because it's a combination of that, and Wizards also has not very often, if at all, that I can recall, actually broken the symmetry when they do a cycle, like having 2 or 3 of the cards at Mythic in a cycle, and then like 2 at Rare or anything like that. So I think it's definitely just something that has to do more with the format, because outside of like Battlecruiser Magic, and if you have like Sanguine Bond or something, which isn't in the set, it's definitely not that powerful. But other than that, yeah, I think it has to be a limited decision.
Yeah, like I was gonna say, like, if you open this as your Mythic, I think you're gonna just feel sad. I think for the most part, like it's cool, like. But do I want to spend 9 mana for this effect? I don't think I do. Like, it could be really big. Like, it could be a really big horror token. But let's be real, it's going to go bounce just like any other creature gets bounced, and then you feel bad. So,
well, it's like, how many people do you know that play Phyrexian Rebirth? I don't really know any.
I think I've got one in one of my decks. but I'm not looking for anything other than the sweeper effect on it.
You're right.
And you're right, yeah, if I get a big thing, well, great, but that's not why I'm playing it. So
Exactly.
I would probably play Phyrexian Rebirth instead of this, but anyway, sure. Hellkite Courser is a other cool card. So 4 red for a creature dragon is a 6/5 with flying. And says when Hellkite Courser enters the battlefield, you may put a commander you own from the command zone onto the battlefield. It gains haste. Return it to the command zone at the beginning of the next end step. So kind of like sneak attack for your commander.
Yeah.
That's cool.
Pretty sweet.
So yeah, and so it literally does what I think it does. Huh. That is a bananas card. I love it. I'm sorry. I was like, is there rules you want to talk about with that one? Because
I was gonna say, I mean, it does work. You know, you mentioned sync attack. It does work with things that end the turn. Like I mentioned, infinite Sundial of the Infinite earlier, or anything on the order of that, where they've where you can keep it at the end of turn. That way, it doesn't go back. But yeah, I love it. I love it, especially as a way to kind of get your commander out later on in the game when you have something like this low cost or this high cost, and it's just become really hard to get back out because it just costs too much from being removed so much or whatnot. And that's kind of a nice way to get around that. I really like it, especially in red.
Nice. That's cool. Yeah, and I was like, it plays with Becca. I think Becca's gonna have a deck built right now, like out of these boxes, like open Becca and all end turn shenanigans go. So
I'm definitely gonna be putting this in Lathliss Dragon Queen, because Lathliss being 6 mana and mono red, it's kind of one of those things. Mono red has a problem where you can get going, but as soon as you board wipe and you're kind of out of card draw later on in the game, it's very hard to get her back out. So definitely going to be something I'm going to be.
Yeah, no, for sure. Like Lathliss is tough that way. So, pardon me, getting late. All right. So next we have Jessica Thrice Reborn. This is a Planeswalker, and we have 2 in a red for a legendary creature, legendary Planeswalker Jessica, with 0 loyalty. And it says Jessica Thrice Reborn enters the battlefield with a loyalty counter for each time you cast a commander from the command zone this game. And so then 0, choose target creature until your next turn. If that creature would deal combat damage to a player, one of your opponents, it deals triple that damage to that player. And then minus X, Jessica Thrice Reborn deals X damage to each of up to 3 targets. And then Jessica Thrice Reborn can be your commander. Okay, so what does that static mean? Is it is it? Okay,
so
I think I misunderstood this one because I think the partner is what really is it partner? This one is it partner?
Yeah, she does have.
So if you cast a commander from their command zone, not necessarily this commander from your command zone, so as you cast the other one, like the cheap kobold, and you cast it repeatedly, now Jessica comes in with actual loyalty that matters.
Right. So Jessica has 0 starting loyalty normally. Her static has her enter with loyalty counters equal to the number of times you cast a commander from the command zone in this game. That means if you have her in the 99 and you haven't cast a commander yet in the game, she will just immediately enter 0 loyalty and go to the graveyard. State-based action checking. Since she can be your commander, if you cast her from the command zone, while the game would see her as being cast while she's on the stack. So she would actually enter the battlefield, counting herself as being cast, and enter with 1 loyalty. So she would immediately come in with 1. As you said, being able to cast your partner commander, if you have a partner with her, which would be the ideal situation with her, I feel like, and be able to get more loyalty on her would make the most sense. I have heard wind of there being some sort of crazy infinite combo potential with her. I haven't looked that much into it. Breaking the format's not really my thing, but I have heard it.
All right. Cool card. I'm interested. I'm intrigued by Jessica. I just don't know if she's good or not. So anyway,
I put her in Torbrand.
Pardon me?
I put her in Torbrand.
Oh yeah. Like there's so much that goes with Torbrand. Like you get the Jaya, you get the Fiery Emancipation, like you get the uncommon Jaya from War of the Spark. You get Torbrand, you get Fiery Emancipation. Now you get Jessica, and now you're just literally destroying your opponents. So like my Goblin deals 12 damage to you. Like that's what it's gonna look like. So all right, next we have Gilanra, Collar of Wirewood. 2 and a green, legendary creature, elf druid. The 1/2. Tap, add green. When you spend this mana to cast a spell with converted mana cost 6 or greater, draw a card. So this isn't ramping me. This is just a mana dork with a. Okay, that's not what I thought it was going to be. Okay, it's got partner. I thought this was a ramp card, like something like Castle Garenbrig. It doesn't do that at all, does it?
It's still technically ramp because the mana that you get from it, you can still spend on anything.
Right.
It just has the kind of tag along on it that if you happen to spend that mana on a spell that costs 6 or more, so it still is ramp. It's not very good. It's kind of bad ramp.
Yeah, it's not. It's not good. It's not a good card. I don't like this. Anyway, okay, it was interesting, but I don't like. Obviously, I was sleepy when I put that one on the list. Okay. Kodama of the East Tree. This one is interesting. So for 4 green, legendary creature spirit, 6/6 with reach. Whenever another permanent enters the battlefield under your control, if it wasn't put onto the battlefield with this ability, you may put a permanent card with equal or lesser converted mana cost from your hand onto the battlefield. So, are there any restrictions associated with this? Like, to me, this kind of feels like Sunbird's Invocation, but not quite.
Yeah, the parallels are definitely there. You get a thing and then you get another thing for free, but it's more limited in some ways, though still probably just as powerful. This Kodama says when another permanent enters the battlefield in your control, if it wasn't put onto the battlefield with the Kodama's ability, you can put another permanent equal or less than convert mana cost on from your hand onto the battlefield. So in a big stompy deck, it's probably pretty absurd. I don't think anyone's looking forward to facing down a Simic deck with this in it, or as the partner. You don't want to see this partner with Thrasios or Kydel for that matter, or probably even Crom. The ability is only as good as your card draw, since the free permanent you get is limited to what you have in your hand. So it is a little bit weaker than Sunbird's Invocation in that respect. But Green has gotten some pretty good card draws in the last few years. In the last decade, you have Beast Whisperer, Guardian Project, Life Crashers, Bestiary, and then there's some older ones now like Shamanic Revelation, Reprints of Regal Force. So once you add blue in here, there's going to be some very real potential for it to get broken pretty fast.
Right. Yeah, it is. Cool card. I like free. That says magic word on it. Cast things for free. Put these on the battlefield for free. So
Wizards and their 2 mana again.
Yeah. Next we have Magus of the Order, which is of the Order, which is another Magus of the. I can't spell. Magus of the U. Come on, Bruce. All right, Magus of the Order. So 2 green, creature, human, wizard, 3/3. Tap and green and tap it. Sacrifice Magus of the Order and another green creature. Search your library for a green creature card. Put it into the battlefield. Then shuffle your library. So I think we understand what the card does. Is there any timing restrictions that we need to know about this?
There aren't any special conditions for Magus of the Order, but it is worth noting that where it says to activate it and you must sacrifice it to another green creature as part of the cost, that the green creature can be a token. Most tokens do have a collar when they are made, or any other creature of green casting cost, such as Coiling Oracle, which is both blue and green. It probably won't come up often, but you couldn't sacrifice a card with Devoid, with the Devoid keyword ability on it. As Void is a characteristic defining ability that states that the Eldrazi is colorless despite having green its mana costs, such as Catacomb Sifter or some of the other from Oath of the Gatewatch. But other than that, generally any green creature you'll be fine to sacrifice as part of the cost.
Very cool. Like, I don't think we needed this card particularly, but I think it's always interesting to have. It's now okay. Let's just read. And so the opposition agent totally hoses this straight up.
Yeah, it does.
Way to go, sack both your things. Now I get to go find a card out of your deck. Sweet. That's just like the worst 3-for-1 ever. Groan. I'm like, there's a situation where like people play Magus and they don't think the ability can get countered because it's not like that's an activated ability on Magus.
Right.
But now your opposition agent totally hoses it. You're like, oh, I feel bad now.
Yeah.
That's a beating. That's a beating. Opposition agent for the victory. Yay! Because you know they're going to go find that Crater Hoof Behemoth or whatever in their deck and just stomp you. So.
Oh yeah. The natural order, which is what this is based on, is why I used to play my Savala Explorer Return. It was kind of a green-white good stuff deck. If I was going to cast natural order, it was probably for Crater Hoof or Vorinclex until I realized how awful Vorinclex is to play against.
That card is just disgusting. Yeah. So I have one, and I put it in a deck, and I'm like, I hope no one ever makes me play this card because no one's going to be happy. Like, no one's happy with this card. Anyway, okay. Horizon Stone was personally like my favorite card of the whole shebang, so to speak. So let's go find Horizon Stone because to me this reads like Proof Fix 2.0. And I need to ask: is this Krufix got a Horizons 2.0?
It is. It's the exact same ability text that Krufix has. So every color now has the ability of Krufix. I'm not really sure if Artifact decks needed that. I'm tempted to put it in my Psy Master Thopterus deck.
Ooh,
I'm also tempted to put it in my mono red decks, like I just mentioned, Lapis Dragon Queen. I'm actually tempted to put it in there alongside Leyline Tyrant, which does a very similar thing for red mana out in Zendikar Rising, because I put Braid of Fire in there, so that's another redundant effect for keeping that Braid of Fire mana.
Right. I am like the Leyline Tyrant like ability with this like is super cool. Like I like that. That to me is like a starting point. But like I'm kind of excited to put this with Villainous, like any deck playing Villainous Wealth and just Villainous Wealth for $1 million. And I think that's like I see a card like this and like my brain immediately goes, well, Villainous Wealth got a new best friend. Like because my Sidisi Brute Tyrant deck, which is really just a Villainous Wealth deck dressed up in DC clothes, wants to cast giant Villainous Wealths, and it's absurd when you see it go off. So
I respect that. Villainous Wealth is probably my favorite card next to Living Dead.
It's so much fun, and everyone hates you. Everyone hates you. So anyway, Horizon Stone is awesome. So anyway, okay. Rings of Brighthearth. Okay. I want to just ask the question because it's been a long time since we've seen this get printed. So there's a lot of players out there that may not be familiar with what Rings of Brighthearth do. Like, we know about Panharmonicon. We know about Strionic Resonator. We know about Lithoform Engine. What makes Rings of Brighthearth a little bit different? And it's like difference between like triggered versus activated versus other ability. What does Rings of Brighthearth work with?
So Rings of Brighthearth works specifically with activated abilities. Activated abilities versus triggered abilities is activated abilities have a cost on a permanent card or a card in your hand, like Cycling is an activated ability. It has a cost and then an effect that happens when you pay the cost. Triggered abilities happen when something triggers them, so they're usually defined by when, if, whenever. Those are usually your defined characteristics of a triggered ability. Rings of Brighthearth and activated ability copying isn't too common. It's usually seen probably most often in Super Friends decks in Commander. Loyalty abilities on Planeswalkers are activated abilities because adding or removing loyalty counters to use their abilities is actually an activation cost. This means you can pay 2 mana each time you activate a loyalty ability with Rings of Brighthearth, including their ultimate abilities, in order to copy them, though you do not gain or lose any additional loyalty from copying those abilities, as you're copying the effect on the stack and not actually paying any more cost other than the 2 Rings of Brighthearth.
Can I just hold you there a second? Did you just say I could like ultimate my thing twice and not lose loyalty counters off it?
Exactly.
That's positively disgusting.
Double emblem.
Oh my god! I had not contemplated that notion, and that makes me. Uh, no wonder they haven't reprinted this card in ages. Like in the age where where planeswalkers are running around everywhere, you don't want like this is potentially more potent than your chain veil, right? Like potentially.
Yeah, I mean, it just goes kind of hand in hand with Chain Veil. It's probably more potent than Chain Veil because Chain Veil you get to pump a planeswalker up twice. Usually, is used to try and get them closer to their ultimate. This will copy the ultimate, whereas opposed to if you use it in Chain Veil, it's usually putting them down to 1 loyalty or 0, and you're just dumping them.
Right. Yeah. Okay.
But yeah, the main thing, another thing that is very common for Rings of Bright Hearth is it also goes infinite with Assault Monolith. That's one of the more key interactions that you see a lot in a lot of the more powerful commander decks. Because although Rings of Bright Hearth can't copy a mana source, so Assault Monolith tapping for 3 colors can't copy that. Assault Monolith does have a separate ability that costs 3 to activate that taps it. So as long as you have 2 additional mana to pump into this interaction somewhere on your board, you can tap your Assault Monolith for 3 mana, and then use that mana to activate its ability to untap it. Then 2 additional colorless mana to make a copy of the untap effect. And when the top untap effect on the stack resolves, before the second one resolves, you can tap the Assault Monolith again. And then after that, the second trigger will resolve and you'll untap. You can untap it again. And at that point, you have infinite mana and you're netting more than you're actually spending in order to do that. So you're only netting 1 mana. So at that point, you have.
Got it. So, all right, Rings of Bright Hearth is a awesome reprint for it to be back, and I think we're all pretty jazzed to see it back.
Yeah.
Very, very cool. All right, last one but not least is Jeweled Lotus, and not that anybody here actually doesn't understand what the card does, because the card is, well, like templated in the most iconic way you possibly could have templated it. It's whether I'm going to give you a soapbox here, there, Chris. Like, you got the floor. What is your take on Jeweled Lotus?
All right. Yeah. So there's definitely been a lot of heated words on the subject of this card, and I'm in the camp actually that believes it's not actually that good of a card and won't be a problem. Most of the arguments have already been made out there, including on the official Magic stream where they announced it for why it's not that bad. It's very narrow in that it only produces a single color and can only be used on commanders. So the scenario people worry about most, which is seeing a turn 1 Urza or a turn 2 Corvold, turn 2 or 3 Corvold, or insert other commanders here, are honestly symptoms of the power level of those commanders more so than the power level of this card itself. And things that they're already doing in those decks as it is. I was fortunate enough to pull one out of a couple of boxes. I pre-ordered this last weekend, and I'm planning on putting it into Master Thopterus myself. I'm not playing a particularly broken take on an artifact deck, and having Sai out before I start casting off artifacts sounds like a scenario for me. If he lives that long, if he lives long enough to do so and doesn't get removed, because the thing about this card and the worst case scenario that most people are imagining when they argue against this card is that most commanders that have a deck built around them are going to have a hard time getting off the ground after you sacrifice that Lotus to get them out and don't have much mana to back them up. In many cases, this actually sounds like a really bad play to me. In the most extreme cases, such as with Urza, there will certainly be magical Christmas land scenarios that manifest a little bit more than with other decks, where Urza will go off because you had some other fast mana rocks in your open hand, and he can activate those with ability and tap those for mana. But if that commander eats removal before it gets back to your turn, and you can't support that turn 1 play, you're going to be so behind for the rest of the game and have the eyes of the whole table on you that it's not even going to be. It won't even have been worth it. So no one's going to forget that you try to put something as powerful as Urza or Corvold or whatnot out a turn, that early in the game, and that's already what happens anyway. I mean, with or without the Lotus, it already happens. Yes, it's another card and the toolkit for them to try and do that more, but it's such a infinitesimally small chance that it's going to happen that I don't think it's worth the amount that it upsets people. I don't think a mana source that you lose that even Muldrotha can't even make much use of is going to be a problem because it only works in Muldrotha to cast Muldrotha if she dies. In many cases, I think Lotus Petal is going to be better in that spot for those decks than people for the decks people worry about getting carried away with. And what I am really happy about is that it actually adds viability for decks and commanders of higher converted mana costs in the game earlier to get them out. And later in the game with those, I keep mentioning, Lathis Dragon Queen. I'm not going to be putting in a Lathis Dragon Queen because that's just not the kind of thing I need for the deck. But I would be more than happy to draw that late in the game to help get Lathis Dragon Queen back out because the commander tax builds up so fast, especially at more casual tables where people worry about more bigger Timmy cards. And I mean, I think it's fantastic. And honestly, when I saw it, I was actually elated. I started playing in Urza Saga in middle school, but Black Lotus was already out of my reach by the time I was an adult and could actually think about buying one. And the Lotus has been one of the most iconic pieces of imagery in Magic's culture and history. And to get something that close just really actually had me excited. I was, so excited, and then I saw all the usual knee-jerk reactions, gnashing of teeth, and vitriol that kind of comes out of a lot of the greater Magic community online, especially on Twitter and Reddit. Almost anything in the Magic community that happens these days, you kind of get that reaction. I'm just waiting for, the next secret layer to come out. And it really bummed me out. And because logically, I know it's not going to be a problem in the vast majority of situations, especially if people are doing the pre-game talks, the rule zeros, and they have an understanding of their play group and the power level that they're expecting to play at. If you're doing that as you should be, then these worst case scenarios people are coming up with aren't going to matter outside of the higher end of the spectrum where, yes, it might cause some waves in CEDH and make some monocolor decks viable. Even in the CEDH side of things, the reason that Tymna and Thrasios and all these multicolor decks are tier 1 CEDH decks is because they have access to the tutors and the removal and the responses and all these colors to be able to be consistent and compete with each other, where this is only going to be good in a monocolor deck, to where even at the CEDH levels outside of maybe Selvala, Heart of the Wilds, they aren't going to, it's not going to be doing something that deck already isn't doing. So ultimately, I'm excited to try and give it a try in my side Master Thopterus, but I don't think it's the problem that people think it is. And I also kind of stick with the philosophy of that you shouldn't make such harsh judgments until you actually have the cards in hand and you're playing with them, because the Magic community is notoriously bad about card evaluation. I picked up Jace Vryn's Prodigy for $2 each on pre-release weekend of Magic Warrior. Tooth and Nail at the Darksteel pre-release was going about $2 to $3 each, and the vendors there knew what they had, and they were buying them up like crazy because they knew Tooth and Nail was going to be amazing. People saying that Tarmogoyf was garbage. It's people need to have cards in their hands and play with them before they make the amount of judgments that they do. And as time has gone on, and as more people get keyed into Twitter and Magic social media, and a lot of content creators are trying to stir up controversy to get clicks and trying to get engagement, people are getting more and more worse about being very cynical and very negative. And it just all comes down to playing with the cards and seeing what they actually do.
I think it's a fair point. Well taken. I think I hope that you're right. I hope the card isn't good, and that people it will help a few decks, and that's fine. A few decks, that's a reasonable position. I hope, for instance, in your case, Sai, gets off the ground and a little bit more readily, and your deck, does what it's supposed to do, right? And I've gone on the record here on the cast and saying I'm not a huge fan of it, but I'm more of not a huge fan from the design side of it, more so than the. I think the play pattern, I think the design is going to result in one of two things. Where if a deck goes off with it, then it's going to be like Arch Enemy, and people are going to may not enjoy that experience. Or if you go off with it, then you in turn get beat down real bad by or you beat down the other three players at your table real quick, and it kind of feels like a non-game. But anyway, hopefully that's not the case. Hopefully the card is balanced and fair and makes people have fun games. That's what I hope. I really do. So we'll leave it at that because there's lots more that could be spilled on this one, I'm sure. And going further into it is just going down the rabbit hole even further than we've already gone. So I'm keeping an eye on the time here, Chris. And I had some of these commanders lined up, but I think it would probably be best for us if we left those for next week for us to go over with Lux because it's getting late and people need to wrap up their podcasts and we need to get to bed. So I wanted to thank you so much for coming on tonight. Really appreciate you coming on to share your knowledge with us and hopefully help our audience and get to know what's going on with the set a little bit better. If people want to get hold of you and reach out to you into the great wide world of the internet, how would they get a hold of you?
Right. So you can find me at Kelsum Gaming on Twitter. You can also find me at that same handle on Twitch as well as YouTube. I'm Kelsum on MTG Nexus, where I'm part of the Commander Primer Committee Council, where we go through and we review threads that people have posted based on their commander decks, where they kind of write guides, and we decide which ones get primer stats and which ones don't. Basically, which ones look professional, like they're very, very much like an authority on this deck or this concept. And I'm also Kelsum on Magic Online and Magic Arena.
Very cool. Well, thank you very much. We'll just wrap it up here with some housekeeping stuff, and then we'll wish everyone a great night. So, as I said, if you made it to the end of the show, well, this is it here. This is how you get your name in that giveaway. So, as a thank you to all our loyal listeners, we've reached 40 episodes, and you're giving away a Breya, and we're giving away a pack of Commander Legends, where you could win one of those fabulous, or you could open up one of those Lotus. You never know. Here they're pre-order. They're selling at a reasonably expensive rate right now. Anyway, but this is how you get into it. So you need to be following us on Twitter for starters. So our Twitter handle is at the theepicexpcast, and you can find us there. So you need to follow us on Twitter. When I post the show on Twitter, you need to retweet the show, like the show, and then include the hashtag #EpicEXPcast. All right, that way I can find your entry. And we'll be running the competition as far as the 20th of November. And we'll be selecting our winner on the week of November the 23rd, which is next week's show, just in time for some Thanksgiving goodness for all you people down in the United States. So what could be better? A little Thanksgiving. Hopefully you get to have some turkey and a nice meal. And you never know, you might win yourself a nice card just for listening and following us on Twitter and following, liking, retweeting, and hashtagging us to get into it. That's going to bring this week's show to a wrap. Thank you very much for Chris for coming on the show this week. If you liked what you heard tonight and you want to leave us some feedback, by all means, find us on Twitter, and that's probably the easiest way. Again, at @EpicEXPcast is where you find us. You can also email us at theepicexperimentpodcast@gmail.com. Both of those are going to be in the show notes if you want to get a hold of us. If you like our decks that we share with you guys almost each and every week, you can find our decks on Moxfield.com. Please look for the username, the Epic Experiment Podcast. If you want to enter into the 31 Days of Christmas, the link is in the show notes for how to get your name entered into that one. Please don't miss out. It's a great month of December for everybody, particularly in this year of 2020 that has been so up and down, full of consternation for everybody. So that brings us to this week's show. We're going to be moving on next week to some more Commander Legends reviews. Probably a deck, maybe two. Maybe Lux and I can both brew one up for next week's show. But that's going to be for next week's show. So until then, have fun wherever you next get to play Magic, whether it's through a webcam, on Arena, on MTGO, or in person, whatever. Enjoy it, have fun, This is the Epic Experiment Podcast signing off, wishing you all the best, and I'll see you next week. Thanks, everybody. Have a good one. Take care.